All right. Hey, everyone.
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
I am doing good.
So we have a special guest on today.
We do.
Someone that's been on the show before.
Somebody we got to hang out with.
I know.
This was so much fun, too.
I'm excited.
So we have Rob from Topper Jewelers, who we got to meet last December when we finally were out to Burlingame to meet the team and the watch family out in the Bay Area. So Rob, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. For those who haven't met me or for those who have, my name is Rob Caplan. I'm one of the owners of Topper Jewelers, jewelry and watch specialty store in the San Francisco Bay Area, in the little town of Burlingame, 20 minutes south of San Francisco. A town where, as you were saying, we got to spend some amazing time together because you were with us for the launch of the LACO. The Topper LACO.
Yeah.
And I have to say, you guys did an amazing job spreading the love for that watch because a lot of people who purchased it put in the notes about how they heard about it on the 10 and 2 podcast. So thank you for...
That's sweet.
Very cool.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it wasn't a hard watch to talk about. It was amazing. It was truly an amazing watch.
Yeah, we're really proud of that watch. That watch was a project of, I think, both ambition and anxiety. Ambition in the sense that probably more than any limited we'd ever done before, we sort of weren't working off an existing, template of a design. I think it had some roots in one model they had called the Cuxhaven, but it was sort of its own energy. And then it had some technical challenges with the heat blued indices. But the good news is they've been delivered now for about 3 weeks, and we didn't have a single QA issue with somebody being unhappy with those heat blued indices in hands. And I'm sure you've seen all the happy pictures of people having them on the internet. And it actually, that watch shipped during the first week of quarantine for most people. And so
that's what I thought.
So we like thinking about how, that was at least a little bit of a ray of sunshine, a heat blued ray, if you will, for a lot of people during that terrible week.
Right.
It definitely was. I mean, we loved all, people were tagging us in the photos that they were getting the watch in at the same time. And it was pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you've been such a supporter of ours, even before the podcast.
Yeah.
Where, I know that you followed both of us and you've sent us some watches over a while ago and that we could post pictures of and kind of get some experience with.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
We loved that we loved that we were finally able to actually meet you in person, and especially for the launch of such a cool piece. It was absolutely phenomenal.
It was great getting to meet you guys. And it's not like I think I'm like, oh, I can spot Picasso on his first drawing in an art gallery. But I do think that one of the skills that we have, my brother and I, is we're able to pick out or see talent like really early. Usually it's with watch brands. But the moment I saw your feeds and the moment I saw 10 to 2, I was like, these guys are going to be stars. I just was like, we need to do what we can to help them become stars. And so, and I think you guys have done amazing. And what a service you guys have been to the community, doing all of these podcasts, all of these Instagram lives during this really challenging time. Thank you guys for doing all that you do.
That's so kind. Well, and I know you've hopped on a couple of Instagram lives too. And speaking of these hard times, I mean, obviously you're a jeweler. You're kind of right out there. And unfortunately, you can't have your physical location open. But I have seen, so first of all, you've been running a couple of promotions. So that means you're online and your phone sales, I'm assuming, are still going real strong.
The good news is, I feel like we, more than most operations, are sort of built to withstand the closure of a physical store because we've spent so much energy creating and having a loyal group of customers that are used to purchasing from us without physically coming in. And we've been just overwhelmed in the last few weeks by how many people have, despite all the economic uncertainty, wanting to purchased from us, wanting to make sure that all of our employees are good and wanting to make sure that we can continue. So we still are fulfilling orders. We do have a full running e-com operation. Nobody's at the store. The physical store is closed to the public, which is emotionally hard because for those of you in your audience old enough to have watched TV in the 80s, our store is like Cheers for a lot of people. It's the place where, for watch collectors, everybody knows you, and, people scream Norm or their version of Norm. And, it's, we really are looking forward to getting back to that. OT has done such an amazing job growing the Watch the Bay meetup group to such a great core group of friends. And we're all adapting. There's a WhatsApp chat that they're doing, and I think a lot of people are really enjoying that, but we all can't wait till this is over. So from a health standpoint, my family is doing fine. One person I am incredibly proud of is my brother's daughter, Allie. Allie is an internist at St. Mary's Hospital. She's in the residency program. And so she's on the front lines of COVID-19, every day. She's seeing patients and treating them. The good news is, even on the hospital front, she says that things are manageable as of now.
That's
so we're all just trying to work our way through it. And no one at Topper has been laid off. All of our employees are working from home, doing training, trying to get better. We're working on making our e-com look even better, trying to take advantage of this downtime. And then, again, trying to provide a little bit of happiness and distraction to people. By the way, did you hear that cough in the background?
Yeah, I did.
that's actually,
is the dog okay?
That's Zeph coughing. Are you okay? Zeph is my dog. Zeph is a Woodle, a Wheaton Terrier Poodle, and
who is the cutest.
He is very cute.
Yeah.
And as I told you when you visited, Zeph is actually from Tennessee. So
he's a Tennessean.
So when we got Zeph 3 years ago, we flew. I think we took like a red eye to Charlotte. Then we went from Charlotte to the Tri-City Airport. We picked up Zeph there, and then we drove like 4 hours straight across Nashville with Zeph, and then flew home from Nashville.
Wow.
So we did the 24-hour Woodle run to get this Woodle from Tennessee.
But he's worth
it.
He's
the best.
I know when we had visited Topper, he was there just kind of chilling and running around the store.
He's the best.
Fun.
Super sweet.
So sweet.
Well, I think for our listeners that may not know a little bit of the history of Topper, if you want to kind of just tell us a little bit how the store got started and how long you guys have been around.
So Topper was founded in 1940. It was founded by two brothers, and the source of the original stores were in the San Joaquin Valley, which is Central California, Modesto, Merced. A lot of farming. If you've heard of the movie, Francis Ford Coppola movie, American Graffiti, that took place in Modesto. So it's really kind of an Americana town. And that's where Topper got its roots. And I think sometime in the 60s, we opened up. Oh, before we get to that, my great uncle purchased it in the late 40s. My grandfather purchased it from my great uncle. My father went into business for my grandfather. Russ joined in the 80s, and I joined. I started in high school in the early 90s, and that's when I sort of first started loving watches. We had opened our Bay Area location in the 60s, and then another one in the 80s. And so I was talking about this on the live stream a little bit. The first Bay Area location of Topper Jewelers was in a failed shopping mall that was called San Antonio Shopping Center. And we had virtually no foot traffic in that mall. And so when I was like 16 years old, I spent lots of time I was so gravitated to the watches that we had. And I just spent so much time flipping through watch catalogs and just trying to memorize styles and looking at styles. That's when I personally got involved. Topper's Burlingame location, that's sort of the Topper, that started in, I think, 1993 in Burlingame. And then all of the other elements of Topper, like that whole Modesto Merced business, ended up closing in the 90s and early 2000s. So now it's the single store in Burlingame, California that everyone sees on Instagram.
That's really awesome.
For sure.
And you being around watches at a young age, did you? I would assume you had probably a pretty cool collection.
You mean now or when I was young?
When you were young.
I really didn't.
I'd imagine your collection.
I really didn't. It didn't really occur to me to collect. So I think I got a Swatch for my bar mitzvah when I was 13, and I can still remember 13-year-old me like listening to the Swatch like when I tried to sleep, and it waking me up because it was so loud. I had a few.
Some things never change.
Yeah, I had a few Casios when I was little. One of them, I think I saw a G-Shock commercial, the one with the hockey player who slaps the puck into the net, and I think I thought it was a G-Shock and it wasn't, and then I think I threw it against the wall thinking it was a G-Shock. When I was really, I think I was like this, I think this was like 84, so I must have been 12, and I think I threw it against the wall and broke it. That was kind of humbling.
Oh my gosh.
But the first watch I really saved up for was a Tag Heuer that I picked out of the catalog when I worked all summer. It was this Series 3000 steel and gold kind of octagonal looking watch. One of the reasons I got it was my brother, who had, he was really had a good design sense, and he was the one who bought all of our watches at the time. He had a steel and gold Series 2000, so I was like, oh, I got a slightly one-up rust, and so I got the slightly more expensive octagonal one. Now, when I say one-up rust, I thought about it from the perspective of someone that knew nothing about watches, because one-up rust meant changing the shape, not thinking, well, wait, his watch is quartz. Maybe I should just get the automatic version. So I made a very 80s decision of how to one-up by just picking a slightly flashier shape.
Yeah, I just Googled an image of it, and
it's magnificently
it definitely
terrible.
Looks very 80s.
Do you see the little rubber grip on the side?
Yes.
Yeah, on the side of the bezel, it had like little rubber things. So those would fall off. So I still have that watch, and like half of those rubber things are gone. But I wore that watch really all through the rest of high school. I wore it all through college, and then I went to law school too, and I wore it really all through law school. So that was my daily driver for like 8 years. And I really didn't get into the collecting aspect till after I finished law school and joined Topper full time. And by now my personal collection it's expanded, shall we say.
So what would you say like really got you really into it? I mean it was when you came over to Topper, but was there anything like maybe a watch that had caught your attention, or was it just kind of being around it all the time?
I think I was always drawn to watches. Like when I was working, even when I was like 15, 16 at the jewelry store, I could have, I guess, focused on anything. But for whatever reason, it was the watches that we had, and we had some good watches. We had Omega, we had Tag Heuer, we had Citizen, we had Seiko, and then we had this version of Seiko that I think doesn't exist anymore. I know it doesn't exist. It was like they had this like dressy thin line called LaSalle. We had those, and I just loved the feeling of flipping through the catalogs. But at the time, I sort of wanted to follow my father's path, which was going to law school, and he ultimately didn't practice. But I just felt like I just wasn't into it on that level then, and it really wasn't until I graduated law school, and then I just sort of saw how challenging business was for a family retailer in, I guess, 2000. With sort of the dawn of the internet. And I just was like, I really want to go back and really help the family business, inject my energy into it. And for whatever reason, when I made that decision, it was just sort of synonymous with looking at watches and loving watches. And I found like during my first year at Topper, just acting like I did when I was 16. Like that Omega catalog from 2000. I mean, I read that catalog so many times, and I just loved going through it. And back then, Omegas all had 8-digit codes, and for some reason, all those numbers just stuck with me. So I loved memorizing like the Omega catalog and seeing if I could memorize it all. I have no idea why, but those numbers are still with me today. I can't tell you any of the modern Omega model numbers, but like,
well, they're way too
but
long.
like I can visualize all those first gen Planet Oceans, all those first gen 300 Seamasters in mid-sized quartz and automatic. All those numbers are with me.
Wow.
So I just was drawn to it, and I think why we like it is always an interesting question. To me, I just thought, they're the intersection of, art, technology, design, and they're just, they're just sort of these, like this standalone oddity in this, very modern technical world. And just the way that you can just execute themes in these physical things, I just really drawn to it. I don't think probably any different than most of the people that would find listening to your podcast interesting. I just love the way these companies are able to explore themes.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about Topper's involvement in watches, but now that you've been in the industry for quite a while and just, kind of really thrown into it, and I've heard you have a pretty phenomenal watch collection now. I know a friend of ours was out there, I think before we even went out there, Abhishek, and he had mentioned that you had pulled out some of your personal collection. Do you have any major favorites in your collection?
I like to pair historical examples with modern watches. So like I have a really nice Omega 300 from the late 60s with solid sword hands. I really am into my vintage Zodiacs. I have a really nice aerospace GMT in a world time. I've got some sort of funky little Omegas. And then I've got some really nice modern vintage pieces, 62 Moss reissue that I really like. Let's see what else is here. I'm looking. Oh, golden tunas. I'm really into golden tunas.
Oh, wow.
Fun.
I could go on. I just, I have a lot of pieces that I like. And then the most important part of my collection, the thing that I really love the most, is I have the first one of every Topper limited edition we've done. And so that's by now, I think that's 13 watches, and that will soon, that box is going to grow a lot more this year and early next year. Those are the watches that I think about the most, because those are the ones that you look at them and you can remember all of the time and stories and challenges and obstacles and getting each of them made. It's sort of amazing when you can look at a watch and you can just think back on all of those memories that are involved with it. Oh, there's one watch I have to say I think it's just like that. So I have a 357250 Speedmaster, which is the one from 2001, 2002, which is Hesselite crystal and sapphire back. And
I love that.
And the reason why one of the reasons that's so special to me is the person who traded it in is just like this amazing guy. His name's Johnny Torres. He runs Johnny Straps. So I had the choice of selling that watch like a month ago or so, or the slightly more desirable one with the gilted movement from earlier with the 863 caliber. That was tritium dial, and it had a beautiful fade, and I was going to keep one of them. And obviously the older one is probably the more desirable one, but I chose to keep the newer one just because of the memories I had of when Johnny traded it into me. So I think that's another way that I often find value in my collection is this sort of the stories of how I get them and, who trades them in. That's a big part of it to me.
We've heard great things about Johnny. I know when we were out there were several members of your watch community that have had straps made from him, and we were impressed.
Very thin, but
Yeah.
and they don't, just like you guys are, don't sound or look like anything else in sort of the watchosphere. His straps, like, you look at that strap for 1 second and you know who made it, and so it just doesn't look like other
That's
things.
awesome.
Yeah,
Very cool.
Very cool. Well, and so getting to the limited editions was just how like we got to meet you in
Right.
person finally and all and head out there. So for people who don't know, you guys have done, you said 13 limited editions so far, and you've hinted to more coming this
I hope
year.
it's
It sounds
13.
like.
I mean, they're technically 8 series, but one Zodiac. I think
Okay.
my math might be bad because one Zodiac had 2, so that would make it 9, and another one had 3, so I guess it's 11. So sorry, 11.
Okay, so you're
But
fine.
there are 5 in development. So don't
Yeah.
panic, people
Well,
who
so-
have only 11 topper editions and are now going, wait, what's 12 and what's 13? It doesn't exist. You're
They're
fine.
coming. It's all coming. No, so yeah, so you've I mean, not there's a lot of jewelers who do, a limited edition watch here and there, but I don't know really of many who have such an elaborate collection of limited edition collaborations that they've done. How did this come about, and how? I know your first one was the Nomos that Kat and I got to experience while
Right,
we were
the
there as well.
Tangente.
How did all
And I
this
love
come
you
about?
guys did a beautiful photo when we were in the cafe waiting for Watchanista to come back with a lacquer prototype. You shot the most beautiful photo of the World Timer and the Tangente together. In terms of how it came up, so the first 2 were, we were having the 75th anniversary of the store, and we wanted watches to commemorate them, and that's when we came out with the Nomos and the Vermont, and those projects ended up going really well. But really, if you look at the design details, we took, I think, the creative twists that people like about our limiteds, and those were there in those pieces. Certainly, the Tangente had loom-tipped hands. The dial texture was different than a typical Tangente. Normally, they're galvanized silver. Ours was white lacquer. The Vermont had, it had the second hand from the MB1, which is the one you have to eject to get, and then 7 and 5 were yellow, complementing the second hand, and that was for the 75th anniversary of Topper. We played around with the loom in creative ways on both pieces, for the anniversary. But I think like those sold out, and it really wasn't until the next year when we did the Oris that we realized, wait, we don't have to make something about us to make a limited edition that people will want. We just need to really critically look at a watch that we really like and just imagine, well, we've been doing this for how many years? We've watched the forums. We've had all of these interactions with customers. What are details that we could suggest to the brand to do to really create something that's just a little bit different, but we think that people will like? And so that's sort of the guiding star of all of our limited editions. Like, what creative twists can we bring to something that we think isn't being made that people would really enjoy? And so the first year in the first company, and I'm grateful to them, that was a major company that took us up on it, was Oris. So with Oris, we did the Diver 65 Topper edition, and that watch took a lot of discussion to get that watch made, because they hadn't done something like that before. But they had the confidence to do it. It was a 100-piece limited. It sold out pretty fast. And the next thing we know, we looked up and we had a portfolio. We had 3 sold out limited editions. So each time we then went to a brand, we had a portfolio of pieces. Then the next one was the Burlingame World Timer, which was the second lowest run of any of the ones that we've done. That one went really well. And again, each time we did a piece, we had one more piece to show a prospective partner. So I think it's just people like them. At least some people like them. And it's really fun. The LACO, I think, was a really great opportunity for us. And I think it opened a lot of doors, because Topper wasn't a LACO dealer when that partnership and that watch was created. And I can tell you that we are working with 2 different companies that are not currently sold at Topper Jewelers, on limited pieces, and both of them have shown amazing trust that sort of inserting a little bit of our design energy and a little bit of our ethos into what we'd want to put in a piece is something that's in the best interest of their brand. And I think we're going to have some great pieces.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, I can only imagine what you guys have done so far. They're always a favorite, and they're a favorite amongst, watch enthusiasts, people that are really, really crazy about watches. And that just goes to show you guys are doing it right. Now, I know with Zodiac, you obviously are a fan. You've had vintage Zodiacs in your collection. How did that collaboration start? Because you also worked with Eric Singer, correct, from the band Kiss?
So Eric Singer is probably my most unlikely friendship that I have, but one of my most cherished and lucky friendships. Eric and I were, and I've talked about this a little bit when I did the Worn and Wound podcast, but I've never talked about it for your audience. So Eric and I got to know each other around 2013 when a mutual friend let him know that I had a certain Anonimo Professionale chronograph available and on the pre-owned market. And Anonimo is a brand that we both loved. And years before I met him, there's a picture of him like double wristing two different Anonymos on like the cover of Watch Time. Anonimo had amazing finish. They took over the Panerai factory after Panerai took the trademarks and the inventory and went up to Switzerland. This Italian gentleman named Federico Macchesi ended up sort of trying to keep the facilities going, producing watches with the Italians that would do all the hand finishing on Panerai in the 90s, or I guess pre-Vendôme Panerais that collectors would call them. And anyway, Eric loved Anonimo, and I happened to have this really rare waffle dial, and he called me up to buy it. We agreed on a price, and we just started talking, and we realized we just happened to have a lot in common. Eric, like me, grew up in the family business. His father was a sort of a big band cruise ship director. And so Eric really learned to play the drums, playing for his father's band, going back and forth on the Atlantic and playing the drums in his band and just getting his hours, just sort of like I grew up in.
Wow.
Cool.
Flipping through watch catalogs. And we both loved NBA basketball. And for whatever reason, we just found ourselves talking to each other a lot. And he helped with some of the design cues of the Oris. And he, more than anyone I ever met, wanted to talk about something like, well, what should the tip of the second hand of the watch be? And we'd have like 45-minute conversations talking about 80s, the way like 80s Seamasters would look, how they would exactly how they would fade, and then we'd go to Google Images and we'd look for source materials for how we wanted it to look, or should we make the index markers orange or not, and what would that mean, and what would that mean for watches of the period, and how do you balance trying to A, be creative, B, use the source material of the brand that you're using, and C, take best of industry design cues from the era, and how do you balance all that? And that's like his favorite thing to talk about. We've never talked about really much in all the years I've known him. We've never really talked about music. He just loves talking about this. So basically, I went to the creative director of Zodiac and I said, Eric Singer helped me with a couple of watches. He helped me with an Oris. How would you feel if we designed a Zodiac together? And it took him, TJ McKnight, the brand director of Oris, took him 3 seconds. He's like, yeah, great, let's do it. And I was like, okay. And so then Eric and I were off to the races trying to make the best watches we could. And we've done 2 series of them, and hopefully a 3rd series will be coming out. All timelines are kind of much less predictable than they were, obviously, a few months ago. Yeah. But hopefully this year, we're working on something that I'm incredibly excited about.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's exciting. If you're excited,
I'm not going to tell you what it is.
We're definitely excited about it.
if you think about a potential watch as like a free agency draft board, I feel like this watch is like in my opinion, it's like the best Zodiac on the board that hasn't been made. I'm not saying if it's a new
Ooh.
watch, I'm not saying if it's a new color scheme, but I feel like it's amazing that they're letting us make this watch, because it's so beautiful. I love it so much, and I'm just so excited to be able to do a modern take on it. We're incredibly excited about it. So that's
My wallet is hurting right now because I know
Yeah.
like I'm still so in love with the blue rally that you guys did, and I'm so in love with that watch.
The Blue Rally was another one that we're really happy about. We're really happy with
Yeah.
how those came out, and the White Wolf too. Those watches were all fun. It's funny when we did the
Yeah.
first one, which I think was 2018. I think it came out in March of 18. I think a lot less people thought about Zodiac than they do now. So when we come out with the next one, like the brand itself will be, it's like such a more known thing. It'll be interesting just to watch the reaction to it. But I can't wait till that comes out.
Well, me either. Now that you're this excited about it.
Yeah.
Well, so one collaboration that I'm sure you probably can talk about because it was published in, was it the
No,
Wall Street Journal or the New York Times?
Yeah, you're talking about the Talker project.
The Talker, right? So there's an article that came out that mentioned that you guys were doing a limited edition collaboration with Talker watches for the new Top Gun film, correct?
So yeah, so the Talker project is incredibly exciting. It's exciting because we've never done a chronograph before. I think we've done a world timer, but everything else I think has been a three-handed watch. And just like the Laco wasn't, I mean, you could say it was sort of based off of the Coxhaven, but this even more so is going to be totally different than anything the brand has done.
Wow.
The watch in the article, in the New York Times article, was presented as sort of like the Top Gun watch. And it happens to be that Top Gun 2 Maverick is coming out over the summer. But that really wasn't like, when we were developing it, it wasn't really so specifically about Top Gun. It was just sort of thinking about a chronograph that was kind of like a love letter to like the late 80s. The kinds of watches that pilots would have worn in the late 80s. It could have just as easily been in a movie like Iron Eagle, or one of the other watches that feature fighter jet pilots. I think that the design cues that we do and the choices that we make will be much more era specific and not so much about that movie. But I'm incredibly excited about that watch. I think we've got a great design, and I think that's going to be a really great piece when it's all done.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it because it's been a brand that's kind of come to the forefront more recently.
Right.
So, and definitely, I mean, you nail every one of your collaborations and designs.
Yeah.
So 100% looking forward to it. And I love that it's going to be a more 80s design because I think that's something that the brand isn't necessarily known for.
Yeah.
They're typically a bit more modern in appearance. So definitely looking forward to checking that out.
We're working with two other partners that we're not, actually it's three that we're not existing partners of, as I think about it. Two that we are, there's one other one, a watch that maybe would have been announced at Wind Up SF had it happened, but Wind Up SF, as we all know, sadly did not happen. There's one other watch we're working on with an existing partner, but then there are two others that I'm really excited about. Both of them are beloved brands to your audience, and both of them have taken such seriousness with really thinking about all of the details of, we just don't want to ever put our name on something or change a color, or we wouldn't want a Topper Limited to be just like a stamp, or we want it want it to have undergone a process, and probably especially after the Laco one, we want that to be sort of the model where it undergoes a slightly painful process where where the brand is sort of pushing the edges of what it can do, and maybe finding out it can do something that it really wasn't even sure that. I feel like,
Yeah.
we sell such big brands. We sell, Omega, Zenith, Grand Seiko. When if we're working with a new company, I think our role should be to really sort of just push the edges of what's possible with that company. And so that's what we try to do.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I like that you brought this up. And I think we touched on it briefly the last time we spoke, that it doesn't say Topper all over it. So maybe for our listeners who aren't, like emotionally, like I know that you guys have such a great clientele. You have such a great family out there, and we got to see that. But for those listeners who don't have that experience with Topper, buying a Topper limited edition, it's not like most other jeweler limited editions where it says the jewelry store name on it, or it's kind of branded all over. Most of these watches you look at and you would never even know that it was affiliated, with with an AD or a jewelry store. And I think that that's phenomenal. And for me, that shows that it was designed by a watch enthusiast, not a jewelry store owner, but there's an actual watch enthusiast that went through the details of this, because your name isn't on it. It may be on the case back somewhere, or on the packaging, but it's not, overly obvious.
But that's sort of the ethos of Topper in general. And God, I just said the word, it's on the ethos, and here I am about to talk about not being pretentious. Jeez. But seriously, that's part of what Topper's.
We'll forgive you.
That's what Topper's all about. Is we don't want we want things to stand on their own when people come in, and someday people will physically walk into the store again. I believe it.
Yeah.
But we want people to have an experience where they carve their own space. We're very receptive. They ask questions, we do our best to answer, and we let customers sort of drive the narrative, and we let them sort of guide their own experience as they go through the store. We try not, we never want to be pushy. If I ever hear anyone had an experience where they felt that they were pushed or pressured or anything like that, that's the kind of thing that would keep me up at night. And we try to translate that into the limiteds. So the limiteds need to stand on their own, or they shouldn't be. And especially if we've made the design choice that, it's not about us. It's not about an achievement or a milestone about Topper. I think our 80th anniversary is this year. I didn't have any interest in doing a 80th anniversary watch. I just want to create things that stand on their own. And I really hope that the watch community at large and your listeners think that when these things come out, that we accomplished that. I hope that they do. We're doing our best.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you guys, it's so funny when we were out there. It's so strange, but incredibly wonderful to see the amount of love and passion that, the Bay Area, watch community has for you and your store, and for the Watch the Bay meetups that happen. They're so passionate, and we love it, and we feel the love even here in Nashville a lot of times. And we have some serious FOMO because we can't be there a lot for all these events.
Well, we're hoping to launch some of these in physical store events, assuming we can, and we certainly want to have you guys out again. I mean, you guys added so much to the LACO event.
We say yes. We sign us up.
Caplan is raising her hand right now.
Don't even care. We'll be there. No, it definitely, it's phenomenal. And I think, again, it really comes down to the relationship that you've built with the community there, because I know from, when we walked into there, it was just Kat and I. It's not like you escorted us into the store. I think you were in the back, or you had stepped out. So, we were just there with your sales team, and
they were great.
And they didn't, we didn't introduce ourselves as, hey, we're Kat and Caplan. We just started talking, and they were so great and so phenomenal, even before that they knew that we were there specifically to see you. And I think that really translates to the community you've built, because we look at, our watch community here in Nashville, and unfortunately, I don't feel like we really have a lot of ADs who necessarily might understand that and really hold on to that and work hard to build a relationship with the local community. And I think that that's absolutely phenomenal. And again, like I knew about Topper before you had started like reaching out to me, and before I met Kat, and Kat had, we had those zodiacs in, and I knew, I was familiar with Topper Jewelers because I see it posted by, not by other brands. I don't see sponsored ads, but I see it posted by your fans and your clients and things like that. So I mean, the community you've built is absolutely
Yeah,
amazing.
we're incredibly lucky. Again, OT has done a phenomenal job of
Mm-hmm.
growing, Watch the Bay in the Bay Area, and everything we do when it comes to what limiteds or store events is, how can we leverage the relationships we have with our brands to make things as entertaining as possible. So we do our absolute best to not ever take that for granted. Know that it can go away at a moment's notice, and we just
Mm-hmm.
try to keep pushing. And I've seen photos of your huge meetups in Nashville, so you know there's no
Oh yeah.
reason why other stores can't do it too. I mean, I hope other stores
Mm-hmm.
in other areas support their watch communities.
Yeah, I definitely agree. For sure. I think it's a phenomenal thing to embrace, and it's great that you guys have embraced it. Yes, so and kind of getting close to wrapping things up, how is my favorite person at Topper doing?
Emma is doing amazing. So you saw her in November, so she's made a lot of progress since then. She's now fully walking, and
Aw.
the most popular Instagram highlight we have is the Emma highlight. So I encourage everyone to look at the Emma highlight. We started putting her on Instagram from the time she was, I think, about 2 months old. And I'm sure 14-year-old Emma is going to realize that her whole childhood was on Instagram. And I have the biggest dad waiting for me in the world. But she is such a bundle of joy. And, she's talking, she's saying more words. Her second word ever was watch. First
Oh,
was dada, second word was watch. So
poor mom.
we have hopes that she's gonna go in the family business. But now she's saying a lot more. And in her last highlight, I think she dunked a basketball that was at least 2 feet tall. So there you go.
She's such a cutie. Definitely one of my highlights.
Yeah, she's 15 months old, and she's doing great. She is definitely one of people's favorite things about Topper, even more so than Zeph the Woodle from Tennessee.
Oh, for sure. I think I had done like a little Catlin post with her when we were there, and we have a mutual friend, and he had commented on it. He was like, "Oh my gosh, that's baby Emma," and I was like, "She's so popular. Everybody loves
There
her."
was one person in Watch the Bay, like he put on the chat, "Oh my God, I just saw baby Emma walking down the street on Broadway." So
She's just the cutest. And yeah, I was gonna say, like, even when we were at the event, I think yeah, the lacquer was great, but a lot of the guys were, and that's not something you would think of at a watch event. A lot of the guys
yeah,
were wanting to see and play with baby Emma. So
yeah,
she's such a sweetheart, and
yeah.
definitely I love, again, it just kind of wraps up that family feel that you really get when you're
Hmm.
over at Topper, for sure.
Well, we do have two families. We have the Caplan family, and then we have all of the employees who work for us, and both of them
Of
are
course.
incredibly important. And we're really confident, and we think, the community has been amazing at supporting us through this hard time, and we're just grateful that we're confident we're going to see this through. We're going to do our best to keep doing promotions to the watch community that they think maybe provide extra value in this hard time. And hopefully before we know it, we'll be on launching our creations, and hopefully people will really be happy to see them. I just want to say my heart goes out to anybody who's hurting from this, whether it's a loved one who's sick, or uncertainty from just so many sectors of our economy just sort of being on hold. So I really hope that we can provide a pleasant distraction in some way. And by we, I mean, those who are trying to create content, like you guys do. It's we will all see our way through this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a big thing, is just the distraction from it. It's nice to just kind of escape from everything that's going on. And like you said, definitely, I mean, our hearts go out to everybody who's been affected. And I mean, our love and support for all of those who are still working, and for people, who are working front lines and, in healthcare or public works, and everything that's just kind of keeping the world spinning right now, because it seems like so much has come to a standstill. So
Yeah.
definitely. But and thank you guys for everything that y'all do. I know, like you said, doing some of these promotions is absolutely great for members of the watch community, because it is a difficult time to think about buying watches and things like that, because it's always a luxury anyways. It's not a necessity. But and you guys kind of doing your part to to kind of encourage people who who may want to be buying a watch, to that it's okay to go ahead and do it, and kind of treat yourself right now too. So but you guys also taking care of the community.
Yeah, well, we do have the best price we've ever had on G-Shock, and
yeah, I've
especially
noticed.
not just random G-Shocks, on full metals. And one of, I think, the core values of Topper is whether you're interested in a basic G-Shock, khaki field mechanical, or you like, a Moser tourbillon. We really do our best to be, a really fun place to come visit and play around with. And whether that's physically in the store, or, you end up, emailing or calling, we'll really do our best for, wherever you're at any given time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think in wrapping it up, we have a tradition of wristwatch checks. So,
Okay.
What is on your wrist today, Rob?
So I've been in a G-Shock mood, and I'm wearing the G-Shock that I purchased when we became a dealer in 2018. I'm wearing the Mr. Porter limited edition full metal, which is a positive display, a black DLC G-Shock. So it says protection right on the dial, and I feel like that's, I don't know, that's just been the watch I've been in the mood to wear for most of this quarantine.
That's
Very
a good
fun.
one.
Yeah.
I've been wearing a lot more G-Shocks lately too.
I feel like I have to. Yeah, for sure.
It feels like, sometimes it feels like it's the end of the world. So
yeah.
those
And if
watches
I'm not
can
wearing that,
take
then
anything.
I'm wearing the Topper Lacko and looking at the blue in different light. One of the two.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't blame you there. There's no way, if I had that watch, there's no way I wouldn't be doing the same.
No.
It's insane. Kat, what do you...
So I'm actually wearing a watch that I picked up from Rob over at Topper a few weeks ago, actually, which is the new Seiko King Turtle, the SRPE 05.
Other than G-Shock, and it's only the green one. I mean, the other two are popular, but that green King Turtle it's phenomenal. That we had a Seiko event right before everything got shut down, and that watch was the star of the event. That green King Turtle is beautiful.
It's so cool. Yeah. That texture on the dial is amazing that they did, and I like all the upgrades with it too.
For sure.
What about you, Caplan?
I have the white Planet Ocean on, and then we were talking about the white rubber straps, so I just went ahead and put it on. There's I feel like there's no rules right now. So
well, I have a Planet Ocean question for you. If we're talking about white Planet Oceans, how do you think people will think about the Tokyo 2020 Planet Ocean now that the Olympics won't happen in 2020? How do you think people will think about that watch in the future?
I feel like it would be okay, because from what I've read is that the International Olympic Committee has decided to continue to label it as the 2020 Olympics, but they're just being held in 2021. So I think because Omega isn't the only brand affiliated, who does stuff with the Olympics. So you have all these brands who've already invested in products that's labeled, 2020. So I think that was a very smart move to specify on the Olympic Committee's part, because otherwise you have these brands who've invested in, in clothing or retail and merchandise, who would be out by now. So I do like that they did that. I don't think it would bother, I don't think it would hurt the sales of that watch at all. It's a pretty cool watch. I'm not a fan of the 40 millimeter case size personally. I feel like it wears a little bit too small. I don't know, maybe because I'm so used to the 42 millimeter. But I mean, it definitely, I like that it's not overly like some of the previous Olympic limited editions were very in your face
with the
Olympics.
rings and such.
Yeah. This one's much more subtle. So I think it's a good looking watch.
Yeah. I still like it a lot.
Yeah.
I like the pop of red on the dial.
For sure. All right. Well, so do you want to let everybody know where they can find you as far as social media and your website?
Sure. Our e-com site is shop.topperjewelers.com. And our Instagram is Topper Jewelers. Most of our energy is in those two places until this thing's over.
Yeah.
Hopefully the physical store will be back up and running sooner than later, but we'll do our best to get through it in the meantime.
Yeah, until then you've got that e-commerce, and I know a few people who've taken advantage of that lately. So,
yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh,
and
I'm happy
for hanging
to
out with us for a little bit.
I'm
we
happy
definitely
to.
Can't wait to. Yeah, we can't wait to get back out there later.
Yeah, and you guys are doing an amazing job. Keep creating.
Well, thank you. And then, just wrapping things up, make sure so you guys can check out our show notes, which is on our website, www.10and2.com. There'll be links to a lot of the things that we talked about today, as well as links to Rob's website and the Topper Jewelers website. And then, make sure you're following us along on Instagram at 10and2 Media and on Facebook at 10and2 Media. We do share a lot of Rob's stories that we are tagged in, and especially when they have some promotions, because that's something that I know our listeners really enjoy kind of taking advantage of. So
do we.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe a little too much, but and I think that's going to be all for today. So thank y'all for listening, and we'll be chatting to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.